3-0 New Zealand in a test series in India for a team that hasn't lost in 12 years, a team that's never been beaten 3-0 in a clean sweep in 130 years. So, Dan Vettori, this New Zealand team have done this. Give me your reaction to what's just happened, what we've just witnessed.
Well, I think the excitement built from the first Test match. I think the expectation for any touring team that goes to India and these types of wickets is it's going to be incredibly difficult. We understand the challenge, and in a lot of ways, it's how do you compete against them? And then for New Zealand to go there and put in such an amazing performance in the first Test match, which I think piqued all New Zealanders' excitement around it. Everyone knew how hard it was with only two Test match wins in 80 years and a lot of trying. You have to go back to sort of the great Sir Richard's era to get one win. So he could only get one win. So for this team to come here and get that first one and then to win a series is probably one of New Zealand cricket's greatest achievements.
A simple question. Just how do you think they've managed this?
Well, I think obviously a lot of planning that's gone on, and I think the hardest thing whenever you go to India is the ability to score runs against Jadeja and Ashwin, and then obviously Kuldeep in the first test, and then Washington come in the last two and perform exceptionally well. So I think the game plan to score runs against those three was almost impeccable and allowed New Zealand to put pressure on India, which is so rare. When you go to India, you feel like you're hanging on for dear life most of the time, but it felt like in all three test matches, New Zealand made the running, and that's really so unique in that part of the world.
What do you think worked for them more significantly, though? Is it that their batters outbatted India, or their bowlers perhaps outbowled the likes of Jadeja and Ashwin?
I think it is the batting. I think when you two are there and you're coming up against those immense those two bowlers in particular with their immense home records, the planning that goes into trying to negate their wicket taking ability, and then secondary how you're going to score runs. And like I said before, it looked like New Zealand had such a good game plan to be able to take on those two, to find the ways to score runs and actually put some pressure back on India.
Then let's talk about two of those key batters specifically. Rachin Ravindra seems to just make a name when he comes to this part of the world in international cricket. And Devon Conway, who we know is capable with what we've seen, but he has had a lean run of form with injuries and whatnot. Just give me your thoughts on the way they batted and what you put that down to, their success.
Well, I think it was so nice for New Zealand to go through, I suppose, Devon's lean patch, and trust him and allow him to keep going. He's obviously a quality player and he's performed ever since he's come into the New Zealand team, and they back that, and so they got the rewards in this series. And Rachin, I think, in a short period of time, has proven how successful he can be in all formats, and in particular in the subcontinent. So to have those two players and a Will Young and other guys contribute in this part of the world meant that they could put pressure on those batters, and they were aggressive. They took some really good options. Daryl Mitchell as well, I think, in this last test. So that batting group came together and stood up and put together six really good performances, really, with the bat. And that's what you have to do against India. It can't just be a one-off. It has to be consistent.
Let's talk Mitchell Santner, who never really had any test credentials, if it's fair to say, before the Pune test, and what he's done to seal the series win in the second test itself. Santner, the bowler working in red ball cricket, the absence of red ball workload behind him.
Yeah, I think there's a trust built up with Mitch over a long period of time. He's a senior player. He's a captain, and I suppose at the start of the series he was secondary to Ajaz, who's been incredibly successful in the subcontinent. But when he got his opportunity and the way that he bowled, the style, the pace, his ability to read the Indian batsman and have a surface that really suited him, just shows when you get on that role that anything's possible. And I think this is the performance that everyone knew Mitch had in him, but to do it in India, to take 13 wickets, to set up a series win, that's incredible.
Ajaz Patel, who's had wickets before, doesn't get any real game time in other parts of the world, including at home. But your thoughts on Ajaz Patel, the bowler itself, and why he was as successful?
I think he's really consistent. His action's repeatable. The ball he bowls is repeatable, and he gets a lot of revolutions on it. And he has a lovely seam position, and for him to be, I suppose, consistent be able to put pressure on these great Indian batsmen. Thought New Zealand set some amazing fields to allow that pressure to maintain. So all those things in combination put together another incredible Wankhede performance from him.
In the past, including in the teams you've played at, perhaps New Zealand came with a number of seam bowling all-round options, but having the likes of Glenn Phillips backing him in a test series in India, he's played his own part, hasn't he? Has that helped just finish the job as well as it has? The fact that you had someone like Phillips who played his own role with the ball and bat?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's the real complementary piece to it all. A number 7 batsman who is as aggressive as he is, but can offer a lot of overs, and probably he reflects back on his performances in Bangladesh, and that ability to perform in those conditions with bat and ball, and have the confidence to come up against this batting lineup and continue on that form. I think that allows every other facet of the game to come together. So I think they'll look at that team, look at Glenn and what he was able to contribute, and think that was a key part to the Test series victory.
Tom Latham, the captain. Some start.
Yeah, great start. That's all you want as a captain, really, isn't it? Get a couple of wins, so your win-loss record looks great. I think Tommy's been part of the leaders for a long, long time, and I wouldn't underestimate the influence that Tim had in that group as well. So between them all, they came together. Gary Stead as well, and were able to formulate a fantastic plan, implement it. Because I think a lot of teams probably have had great plans going into India, but to be able to implement it for 3 test matches pretty much every day of the test series is a credit to all of them.
What can you tell us about Gary Stead? Seems like someone who enjoys just staying and sitting in the background, doesn't get the kind of headlights that coaches in our part of the world get. And I think there were still voices in New Zealand perhaps calling for his sacking not long ago. What does this do for Gary Stead, and what can you tell us about his role?
He's a good man, steady. He would just sit in the background and allow everything to work really well with those senior players, and play his part in building a culture, and as well as a confidence within the group. And I think it's a credit to him and all the other leaders for an extended period of time that they've been able to be successful. And New Zealand's had a great run over the last 10 years, and he's been an integral part of that.
Last couple of questions. What does this tell us about the future for New Zealand's red ball cricketers at a time where a number of their senior players are understandably opting out of central contracts? Test series win like this, young players, Will Young, Willow Rourke. Does it tell us anything about the future of red ball cricket?
I think it's an exciting time. I think what you want to see in world cricket is every team being on a level playing field. The hardest thing to do is a win away from home, and they've proved that they can do that, and that will give them confidence wherever they go in the world. And I think it's great for Test cricket. It's great for the World Test Championship. Opens it wide open, and there'll be a number of teams competing for that.
And finally, where does this stand for you in terms of New Zealand's greatest cricket achievements, perhaps even sport achievements?
It's right. I mean, after the first test, it felt like a mountain that New Zealand cricket had climbed, and then had the women's team winning at the same time. So everything was rosy in the world of New Zealand cricket, and to continue that on, I think it's our greatest ever test victory away from home. It feels like, just because of how hard it's been for every team that's gone to that part of the world. So it should rightly be celebrated.